The Sandman, Act 3, Episode 16. World's End, Hobbes' Leviathan.
I was born in 1899 in Sydney, Australia, the only child of a sea captain and of an English widow woman who ran a small boarding house. She did not talk of my father, and I suppose that it is to her credit that I was neither adopted out nor aborted, but that she braved all the scandal and social discomfort caused by the arrival of her child. From my mother I inherited, I fancy, a certain willfulness. From my father I inherited a wanderlust and a fascination with the sea. So it was that on the day of my 13th birthday, I clambered out of my bedroom window and, dressed in old clothes I'd begged and borrowed from friends, ran down to the docks, where, claiming myself an orphan, I signed aboard the Spirit of Whitby, a vessel en route to Singapore.
20 fathom, sail and sun.
Steady, helmsman.
I didn't smoke and I didn't drink, which meant that by the time we reached Singapore, I had earned myself a little money. Too many sailors finish their journey in debt to the captain, you see. The next ship I signed on, the Pyramus, was a dark ship.
When I say look lively, you look lively!
Captained by a bad man. And with regret, I jumped ship one night in Bombay. There was a mutiny shortly thereafter, or so I heard, and the ship went down with all hands. I signed aboard the Sea Witch, carrying tea and cotton from Bombay to Liverpool. She was a beautiful ship, a barkentine.
Jim, take the watch while those drunkards are ashore carousing.
The captain was Herbert Burgrave. He was an old man, must have been in his 50s. We'd been forced to wait an extra week in Bombay, for what reason I knew not, and he was in a poor temper.
I'll be below in my cabin, trying to make the pennies stretch to pounds with this miserable cargo.
Hello there! Ahoy! Permission to come aboard!
Gangplank's over there, mister.
Can I speak to your captain, lad?
Aye, sir. This way. Finally, one night a gentleman came on board and asked to see the captain. He was an Englishman, his beard trim and neat, his eyes and voice friendly, and I showed him to the captain's cabin. Waiting outside, I heard voices raised. After some time, the captain called me in. Yes, Captain?
This is Mr. Gadling. He'll be our passenger on the voyage. Going back to England, he is. Mr. Gadling, this is Jim. He's a hard-working lad, and he'll be your steward for the voyage when he's not needed elsewhere.
Very good to meet you, Jim.
I liked this man.
And Mr. Gadling, I am not one for passengers. Mouths to feed who don't pull their weight. This is a Sea Witch, not the Savoy Hotel, if you get my drift.
I do indeed.
Jim, show Mr. Gadling to his cabin. We'll be setting sail at dawn.
This way, Mr. Gadling, sir. This here's your cabin.
And, that door at the end there.
The wardroom. You'll mess in there with the bosun and his mates.
Ah. We'll see.
The captain didn't much care for passengers, but Mr. Gadling was paying his way, and I got the impression that it didn't matter if the captain liked it or not. He could do nothing about it.
2-6-8.
The sky was dawn grey, and a chill wind came up off the waves as we hauled on the sheets, the ropes that hoisted the sails aloft.
Cast off, bosun!
Aye, Captain.
Think on it, and you'll be there. The creaking of the rigging, then the magical moment as the sails majestically lifted and straightened and filled. I stood there sweating with the rope in my hands and the sun broke above the horizon, and the gulls mewed, and the grey sea turned to sapphire. And I knew this would be a good voyage. In half a day, we were out of sight of land. It's a strange life aboard a tall ship. The Sea Witch was his own little world. The sailors were from every land under the sun, or so it seemed. There was a German from Hamburg, a taciturn cove, who would, when rummed up, tell us how the Kaiser would soon put us all in our places. There was a tall Norwegian and an equally tall Swede who hated each other's guts. They'd shipped together before, and there was an old quarrel there, although I never knew the bones of it. Among the sailors were Africans, West Indians, and Americans. One of them, Nathaniel Dorning by name, we called him Dorney, was the best sailor on the ship. He was the second mate, and the general opinion on the Sea Witch was that he would have been a captain, if only he were white. There was an Irish cook, and a good one, a rarity on board, who read poetry of a night in his hammock. And a Scottish engineer who minded the engine that pumped out the bilges. His name was Campbell, but the skipper used to call him Donkey Man because of the days when a donkey would walk a treadmill in the hold, fulfilling the functions his engines did now. The first mate was a Californian named Canby. He took a shine to me, did Mr. Canby. While I fed the chickens on the main deck, he used to tell me,
I don't know what you're doing here, lad. Ships like this aren't going anywhere. 10 years' time, the only tall ships will be in museums.
"It's too big to fit in a museum."
Yeah, funny. Steamships. That's the future. Who wants to be forced to ride the wind?
I do. I've been on a steamship, and I didn't like it one little bit. They're rust buckets, Mr. Canby, the lot of them. All that smoke. And what's the point of being a sailor if you're living high above the ocean, instead of cool and comfortable below decks, cooled by the water, listening to the sea going by?
You're a romantic.
Why be a sailor if you're not? This was on the 5th day out from Bombay.
Mr. Canby!
Yes, Donnie!
Over here! Shake a leg!
Right! You better come with me, boy.
There's been food disappearing, you see, Jim. So, me and Mr. Canby.
Quiet!
The hold was stacked high with bales of cotton and crates of tea.
Back here! Got him!
Mr. Canby stood up, holding a small Indian gentleman in rumpled clothing by the scruff of his neck.
Right then, you! What do you mean by that?
I am sorry, sir. However, I would appreciate it were you not to hurt me.
I'm not going to hurt you. I'm taking you up to see the captain. Now, he may hurt you.
Oh, dear.
Come on, you.
I can assure you, I am not dawdling.
Morning, Mr. Gadling.
Good morning, Jim. Have we a guest?
Taking him to the captain.
I'll join you.
The Indian gentleman was a strange little duck. He was well dressed, very small, and very delicate of face and feature, with a pince-nez pair of spectacles, behind which he had the most peculiar almond-coloured eyes.
A stowaway. You know, Gunga Din, I don't take particularly kindly to stowaways on my ship.
Esteemed sir, while I must perforce apologize profusely for concealing myself on your ship, I would not have done so had I not been placed in a grossly untenable position. You see, I quite need to get to Liverpool.
Well, you won't be doing it on the Sea Witch, damn your eyes. You're going to be put in chains in the lazarette, where, because I'm not a cruel man, you'll be fed ship's biscuit and given water to drink.
Captain.
And then I'll have you put off at Aden. And you can count yourself lucky that I don't have you thrown overboard.
Captain Burgrave, might I have a word with you?
Oh, it's you. Hold your blasted tongue, Gadling.
I'm afraid we must talk about this, Captain. Now.
Very well. All of you get out. Dawning, keep tight a hold of the little rat's arse.
It is indeed a pleasant day, gentlemen. The magnificent sapphire sea, the balmy breeze. Does it not make you feel most good to be alive?
Shut up, you.
But this is a day of miracles. After all, I have spent days in the stinky hold, coming out only at night. Is it not wonderful, boy?
Don't talk to him, Jim.
Jim. An excellent name. Short, if I am not mistaken, for James.
There. That's all taken care of. You can let him go now, gentlemen.
Captain?
Let go of him, you swabs. This is our newest passenger. Mr. Gadling's taking care of his passage to Liverpool.
Oh.
Jim, show the gentleman to the purser's cabin and tell Mr. Stewart he's bunking with the men. And tell his nibs how lucky he is on the way.
He's not lying. You are lucky. Last ship I was on, they found a stowaway. The skipper hit him aside the head with an iron belaying pin, and over the side he went.
Then it is a good thing that I chose to travel on the Sea Witch.
The next few weeks were, well, perfect, I suppose. The trade winds blew steadily. We made better speed than we had any right to, and even bought ourselves some loafing time. The sun shone, and the chickens kept laying, and the cook gave me a book called Saltwater Ballads, and I even began to learn by heart the ones I liked most of all. We would tell tales at night, under the huge tropical moon, Hob and the Indian gentleman leaning on the rail at the stern of the ship.
You know, there's a lot we don't know about the sea. I've been in shipping on and off, donkey's years now. I don't know a blessed thing more than I did about what's under there. There's more sea than land, and there's a lot goes on land that's pretty bloody mysterious, eh?
Ah, you are talking about mermaids then. The cold, fishy women with clammy kisses and scaly breasts. Ladies who lure you by clasping you to their cold bosoms and then make you go, "Now I am dead, oh dear, oh me," by dragging you beneath the briny.
No, I'm talking about what's under there.
Ah, young man, you are looking most remarkably well.
How did you know I was here?
Is he not looking well, Mr. Gadling?
If you say so.
Ah, but I do say so.
Hello, lad.
Mr. Gadling?
We are pondering the sea at this moment, and I was also telling Mr. Gadling about the fickleness of women.
And I was telling him that he was talking out of his Khyber.
Ah, yes, the entertaining English slang. Let us go up the apples and the pears together. But I tell the truth. Listen. Once there was a king who had a wife whom he loved more than life itself. More than life itself. This is no pretty turn of phrase. Listen. One day, there came a holy man to the palace. He was thin as a scarecrow, his beard white as pearl, his skin blackened and gnarled like burnt wood by the sun. He demanded to see the king. The guards refused him entry, whereupon he took a knife from his loincloth and with one hard swipe cut off his left hand at the wrist. They were most astonished at this action, more so when they realized that there was no blood issuing from the wound. The holy man picked up his hand, which was crawling around in the dust, scuttling and skittering like a scorpion, and fastened it once more to his wrist with a mystic gesture. Magically, he was whole again. "Now," he said, "take me to your king." And they did. The holy man was brought to stand before the king on his throne dressed in the finest silks. The holy man took a piece of fruit from his loincloth and held it out. "Light of the gods on earth," he began, "I am, as you can see, a holy man, and I have, through trials undreamed of, and through alchemy and through prayer, obtained for myself this fruit. In appearance, it partakes of both the fig and the apple. It is, however, the fruit of life, and whoever eats of it shall live forever." The king came down from his throne now. He and the holy man looked at the fruit held in the holy man's outstretched palm. "So why do you not eat of it?" asked the king, who was nobody's fool but his own. "For 3 reasons. Firstly, I am an old man. Immortality should be given to the young and those in good health. Secondly, I desire to remain upon the karmic wheel of death and rebirth on my path to eventual rewards far greater than living forever. And thirdly, asked the king. Thirdly, I am too scared to taste of it. How can you assure me, asked the king, that this is not poisonous, that you are not tricking me? So the old man ordered a mongoose brought to him and fed it with his hands a tiny slice of the fruit. Then he ordered a fire kindled and the animal tossed into the furnace. In time, the fire burned down, and the king saw the mongoose questing about inside, unharmed by the flames. Then the king knew that the man was telling him the truth, and he took the fruit with thanks. He ordered that gold be brought for the holy man, but the holy man refused it and went on his way. The king pondered the gift of immortality. Now, he had a wife whom he loved, as I said, more than life itself. For he decided that this wife should receive the gift of the fruit and not him. That night, he suited deed to word and gave his wife the fruit of life. Alas, his wife was as unfaithful as any woman, and she had a lover who was a captain of the palace guard. And that night, because she loved him, she gave her captain the fruit of life. There was a prostitute in the town, not a raggedy-assed prostitute, but a courtesan, like they had in those days, with whom the captain was infatuated, and whose favors he bought with gems and gold and silver that he cozened from the queen. And to her he brought the fruit untouched. She was very beautiful, but she was uncertain enough of the fruit and of its provenance, and desirous enough of earthly reward to hie herself to the palace. She offered the fruit to the king. He took it from her, and once she had told him how she had obtained it, ordered her to be rewarded. Then he had the queen and her lover brought to him and had them both killed, without torture though, for he had loved her more than life itself. He dressed himself in the clothes of the poorest beggar in his realm, and making his brother king in his stead, left the palace. He ate the fruit and walked out of the city into the ruck, never to be seen again. There. So you see the point I make concerning women and the fickleness of what your Mr. Kipling has so justly castigated as a species more deadly than the males.
I think it's a stupid story.
He's got a point there, old friend. Women aren't unfaithful, it's people are unfaithful, and men tend to get a lot more opportunity than women to mess about.
What would ye ladies? It was ever thus. Men are unwise and curiously planned. They have their dreams and do not think on us, what take the golden road to Samarkand.
Sorry?
It's poetry. I read it in a book. Why does the water glow like that?
The dream magic of the sea.
No, phosphorescent algae.
Anyway, the story wasn't true.
No?
Nobody lives forever. Last ship I was on, my friend Harry fell from the rigging. We wrapped him in sail and threw him overboard. First he floated, then he tipped up and sank.
You are a deep one, young Jim.
What?
Like the sea. You've got hidden depths. Do you ever wonder about what goes on under there? There's more sea than there is land, after all, and we never see more than the tiniest fraction of it. Oh, there's a storm on the way.
How can you tell, Mr. Gatling?
Years of experience.
Get those sails in before we're on our beam ends.
There was a storm the next day, and half the chickens were washed overboard.
Macefield's a fine poet, Jim.
I like him. I enjoyed working for Mr. Gatling. How's that? He was a funny man. And he was clever, too. He'd been on the ship less time than I had, but he knew everything that happened on board. He'd tell me things about the crew. For example, he knew about Mr. Canby's gin business, which was more than the skipper did. Porthole's done.
Very good. You can tidy my desk and then you're all done.
He knew about the history of shipping too. Old boats and ships. One evening, he told me about the slave ships. How all the slaves would be linked together by one long chain. So if they sighted a naval ship, they'd just throw the slave at the end of the chain overboard, and the rest would follow into the sea.
What you got there, boy? Round your neck?
It's my lucky stone. I was given it in Singapore. It's meant to stop you being drowned.
A lump of chalcedony won't stop you drowning, but I'll tell you how not to drown if you like.
Really? Honest?
Sure. Don't drown.
Huh?
You just don't drown. I've done it half a dozen times. It's easy once you get the hang of it. Don't drown.
Very funny, Mr. Gatling.
It's not a joke, Jim. Although if you take it too seriously, you're in deep trouble. I'm going up on deck, I think. Bit of fresh air never hurt anybody.
Chalcedony? Core? Come on, Jim. Finish the job. Hello? What's this? Between Mr. Gadling's sea chest and the wall, I found an old tin photograph, like they used to have, of two stiff-looking people, a man and a woman. The man looked enough like Mr. Gadling to be his father. It had writing on it. To my Bobby, till death, my sweet, your own Elspeth. I put it down on the chest. Next day I cleaned his cabin, but the photograph was gone. After the storm, the winds abandoned us. We were becalmed, and the sails hung limp and lifeless from the masts. The first day of it, nobody said anything much. The crew did wind things, each in their own way. Some of them whistled idly, as if they were happy as they went about their business. Whistled for the wind.
There, that'll do it.
Nat Dorning had a lump of pink coral wrapped in white sealskin, which he hung from the bowsprit. It did no good. The ship still hung, seemingly suspended, on a sea that was as flat and reflective as glass. Next morning, the skipper himself walked down to the stern of the ship and threw his oldest shoes into the water. Of course it works. If you really need wind, the skipper has to throw his old shoes overboard.
Ah, a propitiatory sacrifice. How remarkably sagacious.
I thought it had worked at first, because the sea soon darkened in the east. But then we realised it was...
Fish! Look at them! It's fish!
He was right. The sea was alive with fish. Fish of all manner and shape and size. Dolphins leaped and splashed, throwing up showers of tiny fishes. The water churned and glittered silver. A sea full of fish, all of them swimming towards the west.
Quick! Get that net over the side and catch some provisions. Donnie, swing up some salt in empty barrels.
On the skipper's urging, we lowered a net and hauled aboard more fish than we could have eaten in a month of Sundays, from huge cod to tiny glittering jewelfish, whose names I never knew. There was even a shoal of flying fish, which I thought unknown in those parts, some of which landed on the deck of the Sea Witch.
They're just throwing themselves aboard now, lads!
Mr. Gatling picked one up as it writhed and flopped on the deck, and he threw it back into the thrashing water.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
And then the fish were past us, gone to the west. The waters emptied, went from silver to blue, and from blue to black. Up in the rigging, the lookout gave a hail. He'd seen something, far away in the sea. Something looking like an island. A black something in the water.
Are you mad, man? There's no land here.
I can see it!
Where is it?
Over there! that's funny. It's gone!
And then the deck lurched and tipped and bucked, and the world went mad. The waves were suddenly mountainous. The ship heeled over, everyone grabbing for something to hold on to. A huge wave, dark green, rose high over the masts, but it did not break over us. It was no wave. The sea serpent was unimaginably huge, its coils, each bigger than a dreadnought, curling around us in the water. Its head was long, with a snout like a dragon. There was a long fin running down its spine, crested with bony knuckles. The sea serpent's body was encrusted with barnacled, seaweeded scales. Another loop of the beast was visible in the extreme distance. Something this big could never exist on land. It made the ship look like a tiny toy thing bobbing on a pond. And then, just as suddenly as it arrived, it was gone. The ocean was still again. But no one said anything. Had everyone been swept overboard? I looked around. The crew was safe and on deck. They wore expressions of shock and joy. Some were weeping. They seemed to be trying to gather their thoughts, as if everything they thought they knew was but a drop in any ocean which could contain a creature such as this. Mr. Gadling was nearest me, his head tipped a little on one side. He looked, in some way, almost amused.
Wind's picking up, lads. Let's have the reefs out the mainsail.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Mr. Gadling, we saw it. The sea serpent. We saw it.
So?
So, we've got to tell everyone. I mean, it's real. It's not imaginary. We saw it.
Of course we did, Jim.
A hard wind came up then and filled the sails.
Everyone aloft, Mr. Canby, if you please. All sails set.
Aye, sir. Get aloft, lads! Let's move this town!
The captain and Mr. Canby began to shout at us. We made good time to aid him. Mr. Gadling, you saw the sea serpent, didn't you? We all did.
Of course I did, Jimmy. I've seen an awful lot of strange things in my time, and this is one of the best yet.
But no one's talking about it. When I asked the other sailors about it, they just changed the subject.
You surprised by that?
Yes, I suppose I am. I mean, we could tell the world. They'd know there really was sea serpents.
Well, we'll dock in Aden by this afternoon. Soon as there's shore leave, you could go into the city, find some newspaper correspondent and tell him what we saw.
Would he believe me?
You could bring him back to the ship. He could ask around. The truth would probably come out eventually.
Mr. Gadling, why hasn't anyone seen it before?
Maybe they have. There's tales of sea serpents after all. But the sea's a big place, Jim, and deep. For example, nobody's seen a giant squid that I know of. They just suppose there have to be some because they've seen the huge sucker marks on the sides of whales. Big place. There's lots of secrets down there.
We made Aden later that day. We were to take on provisions before sailing on for the Suez Canal. I was given shore leave the following afternoon, and I went into the city, along with some of my shipmates. The horizon was beginning to lighten when I returned to the ship. The Indian gentleman and Hob were sitting together on the quay, perched on crates of stores for the ship.
We can meet any time. You don't owe me anything. There's few enough of us around. Least we can do is watch out for each other.
Your sea witch. She is so beautiful aboard.
I'm out of shipping next time around. Printing again, I think. Or publishing, maybe. Hello, Jim.
Good evening, young James. Ah, me. It is past the hour when all well-meaning folks are safe in the arms of Mr. Morpheus. For myself, I am up the wooden hillock to Bedfordshire. I shall leave you two young people together.
So, you've been ashore then?
Yes.
Who'd you tell?
Tell?
About the sea serpent?
Nobody.
I didn't think you'd say anything. Like I said, we've all got secrets, and you don't want to draw attention to yourself. Isn't that right, girl?
How did you know?
You're not the first lass I've known in my time was passing, nor even the 50th. There are things you get to recognise given enough time. Some of it's the voice, and some of it's the hands, and a lot of it is learning to see what you see and not what you think you see, if that makes any sense.
It's not fair. Men can be sailors. Why can't girls?
Because life's not fair, I suppose. There. And that's profundity for you. What's your real name then, Jim?
Margaret. Mama used to call me Peggy.
She's a lovely ship, isn't she?
Is she really yours?
Smart girl. You was listening. Yeah, she's mine. Well, until we dock in Liverpool, she's mine. I think you've seen this.
Your photograph?
Yes, my photograph. And I will have the sad duty of telling the company that my great-uncle here, Robert Gadling, died of something properly tropical in Calcutta. He's left me his shares in the company as Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob?
I'll sell 'em on. No interest in boats as young Robbie, back from 20 years abroad. There. Then there'll be nothing left could link me with the old man.
How old are you, sir?
Old enough to have learned to keep my mouth shut about seeing a bloody great snake in the middle of the ocean. Come on then, back aboard.
You won't tell anybody about me, will you, Mr. Gadling?
Call me Ob. Given time, you'll spin a yarn of what we saw in the ocean. Given time, I'll tell the tale of the handsome cabin boy. But given enough time and the right audience, the darkest of secrets scum over into mere curiosities. No one will believe either of us anyway.
I last saw Mr. Gadling on the dock in Liverpool. He left with the Indian gentleman, and I never saw neither of them again. I've not dared tell my tale before, and if I thought this inn was a real place, and all of you anything more than phantoms and opium ghosts, I'd not have told it now. And I shipped from Liverpool to Rio, and from Rio to the Azores, and from there to Boston, and now to Newfoundland. And, save for Mr. Gadling, there was never a man-jack thought me anything but a true-born boy, though there were a few close shaves. But I'm getting too old for the trick, which troubles me, for the sea is in my blood like a fever, and I don't know how I can leave. Though I know my time on the sea, like the tall ships, draws to its end. So it makes no difference to me whether you believe a word of it or not. And when, someday soon, I forsake the sea, like a sailor leaving his lady love on the shore, I shall take another name to me and build myself another life. But for now, you can call me Jim.